Yeah. And if you're going to a doctor and getting a diagnosis, you're doing the right things, right? But it's more so, I think it's more destructive when people are like, oh, I check all 5 of these boxes, I'm diagnosed. Or they take an online quiz or something along those lines. It's like, pay attention to the things that you identify with, obviously, but also you need to see a professional and get an actual diagnosis, not just to assume that you qualify for a diagnosis, because it's a lot more complicated than I check 5 boxes.
Welcome to another episode of Counselor Off the Clock. I am your host, Lydia Thompson. I am a licensed counselor. I believe that life is about balance. It doesn't have to be so serious all the time, even when we're talking about mental health. Today's episode features a return guest, Michele Horne, our certified cool counselor. This week's episode, pop psychology. With the influx of social media and mental health tips coming from non-professionals online, we talk about the good, bad, and the ugly from pop psychology. We are a new podcast, so if you are loving what you're hearing, it would mean the world to us if you give us a like, a share, a subscribe. And now, I hope you can get comfortable because we are off the clock. So last episode, I shared some embarrassing Facebook statuses.
Right.
And I'm going to continue today.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And see if you can roast me. My gosh. I started sharing these because I was so embarrassed of them, and I thought, why did you hand it to me like that? And I thought, okay, if I share these, what we know about shame is the shame will lessen when you are vulnerable and share it. And so I've actually gotten so many messages about it of people connecting with it. So I'm like, great. Not that I did this for any therapeutic reason other than it's been 15 years, so the mortification has gone down.
Right.
All right, 15 years ago, 2009, is so full after a huge meal at Macaroni Grill.
Yum. But also, you're like, just in case anyone was wondering, I'm so full.
Why did I post that? Okay, this morning, 2011, 13 years ago, this morning, I put hair gel on my toothbrush. I hope this isn't an indication of how my day is going to go.
Me neither.
Like, that happened to me, and it was embarrassing because I did it. And then I decided that it was funny enough that I wanted to post about it. Oh. Please take away my shame. You're looking at me with judgment.
No, I'm not.
Okay. 2013, 11 years ago, piranha juice.
Okay. Just piranha juice. That sounds like a drink that you would buy on, like, Bourbon Street.
I have no idea what that even is. This is the problem with what I posted. I'm like, what was I thinking?
You weren't.
11 years ago, 2013, purple sweaters are fun to wear until Barney gets jealous and tries to fight me. Say more.
I'm just curious if Barney ever did get jealous.
That's what you're curious about? I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking.
Like we talked about on the last episode, though, my brain went straight to SpongeBob.
Really?
The best time to wear a striped sweater.
Was all the time? Okay. We ready? 14 years ago, 2010. Happy birthday, Ellen DeGeneres.
Are you a passionate fan of Ellen DeGeneres?
4 exclamation points. I was.
Interesting choice.
I loved Ellen.
Yeah, Ellen's great.
But I did not spell her name right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to actually spell it, but I know that the comments, 7 comments and 4 likes, were telling me that's not how it's spelled.
Gotcha. Everybody let you know.
Fine. 15 years ago, 2009. How do you make squeaky shoes not squeak anymore? No comments, no likes.
Not a popular one.
But it's one that I don't know the answer to.
I think you just gotta scuff them up on the concrete. Right?
Scuff them?
Like the bottom.
Where do you think the squeak is coming from?
I actually don't know. I thought you just had to, like, rough them up a little bit.
Okay, so it's not like squeak like cute on a basketball court, like right? It's deep in the shoe.
Oh.
There is a squeak.
I'm not familiar, honestly.
I have a pair of shoes. Even now, there is a deep squeak.
Okay, I don't know how to fix that. I'm gonna be honest.
If you know the answer to how to not make my shoes squeak anymore, please let me know. I have been curious about this for 15 years. It's weighed on me. All right, let's see what else I got. I was in the process, sharing my thoughts. 2010, 14 years ago. Is making dinner tonight. Any ideas? 5 comments. I don't know what they said. I just sent you screenshots. And then I updated everyone. Made chicken Alfredo.
Ugh, yum. You're making me hungry. Macaroni grill.
Chicken Alfredo.
It's 11 a.m., but I could go for macaroni grill.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Always could go for macaroni grill. All right. This is the last one I'll share today. There's so much here. 13 years ago, 2011. I was a senior in high school. Let's see what the listeners think about this. I'm more good looking than any dog, chicken, giraffe, snake, cow, pig, hog, or a giraffe.
I'm curious, what made you compare yourself to those things? Animals. Giraffe. You didn't say how you spelt it.
I said giraffe.
Geeraff. Giraffe. And you had already said giraffe earlier.
Well, giraffe and a giraffe are 2 different things.
And what's the difference between a pig and a hog? Is there? I feel like there might be, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Like a boar? Okay, we're getting into a conversation for another time.
Is it?
Are boars,
conversation now.
pigs, and hogs different?
I think they've got to be. They're
I know
different
boars
words.
are, but I don't know about pigs and hogs. A hog, I don't know. This is something for Google later on.
Yeah. I truly believe some of these posts that make absolutely no sense, they must have been an inside joke.
Definitely. Yeah. None of my inside jokes ever made any sense.
But why did I feel the need to post them on social media?
You were just hoping your friends would get a good kick out of it, I guess.
Like, nowadays, people expect, 50 likes. I was posting things unashamedly with 2 likes on it.
Make Instagram casual again.
I'm with you. Why don't I post my every thought anymore?
You might lose some followers, but you could try.
I don't know.
Maybe because you'd get canceled. I'm kidding.
What?
But seriously, if people just posted their thoughts without thinking twice, you'd probably get canceled eventually.
I'm not going to name drop anyone, but I do think there are creators on the internet that are posting basically their every thought. Unfiltered.
Probably.
Some content I'm watching, I'm like, did you not think twice about this? And I'm living for it. Thank you for saying these things.
Yeah.
But also.
Yeah. Like TikTok specifically, I really do enjoy the story times. but then I'm like, should you have shared that on the internet? I don't know. Like, that's a choice that you made. I feel like there's a good balance between not oversharing and, you know, not trying too hard to be perfect on social media. So
I think that can be really hard, and I think it's stopped me a lot of times from posting anything at all. And even this podcast, I'm like, ugh, well, maybe I should change my body before I do this, or maybe this isn't good enough, and so maybe we'll not do it on YouTube or whatever. And really, I'm like, you know, put it out there.
yeah.
Like, I'm probably the one that's criticizing myself the most. So yeah, I think it has stopped me a lot from posting stuff. I think about, you know, I'm reading the stuff from like 15, 14, 13 years ago. Like, is that what I'm going to feel about the content I'm putting out now?
No, I don't think. But
why do you not think so?
Because you were a teenager and you weren't intentional, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And this is more intentional, you know? Has meaning. Not to be so, that wasn't a deep question, but like, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Do you post a lot online?
Yes. But like I do, but not super authentic. Like, I'm not posting myself fresh out of bed or anything crazy like that. Like, but yeah, I definitely post stories on Instagram a lot. And I love Twitter. Twitter's my favorite social media.
You mean X?
Oh my God.
Do you still call it Twitter?
Yes. It'll always be Twitter to me. Because I think it's really funny. And yeah. So, and I also like keep up with sports and the news on Twitter. So,
sports.
I do like sports.
Yeah. Wow, that's your news source is Twitter?
Yeah, which like, but like, not to get super controversial here, but where else are you going to get real news? I feel like, okay. Anyways, I should stop talking.
No. I get what you're saying is like, people do get their news from social media.
Yeah, and like, news that's on the TV now, I feel like is mainly for entertainment purposes, and like, I would like some factual information where I can like read an article and see where it's coming from, you know?
Yeah. I think that's difficult because obviously people like make shit up on the internet. And that's part of like what we want to talk about today.
Yep, that's actually where we're headed.
That is where we're headed. And so it is like, where do you find factual information? What are credible sources? Is this news station a credible source? Sometimes not.
Yep.
I mean, it is on the spectrum of highly curated to authentic content. It is highly curated.
Right.
Which sometimes that means it's really fact-based, and sometimes that means they know how to present information to you in a way that makes you believe them. And I think this is why people are drawn to more authentic sources of news, stories, and human connection. So, well, let's jump into our topic.
All right.
Of pop psychology, and mental health on social media. Again, this is part of the reason why I wanted to start a podcast. Is there's complex conversations that are being had in 30 seconds on TikTok, and to simplify a topic that we go to school for years for, that we have experience in, we do trainings, we read books, we sit with clients for hours and hours and hours and hours, to boil it down to a 30-second tip is doing these topics a disservice. And we've got me on my soapbox here. And I think it makes it difficult for people to think and do the work. Let me organize my thoughts. It makes it difficult for people watching, and I've been one of them, when somebody's like, just drink this amount of water and then just change your whole
mindset.
And I watch and I go, okay, I just got to change my mindset. Just got to change my mindset. How do I change my mindset? You didn't tell me any of that. You didn't tell me any of the obstacles to that. It's not, I call it the like just do it advice. And I feel like that's what I see a lot of on social media.
Just put your mind to it.
Just do it. Just
what's preventing you from changing your entire life?
Change your entire life and you're going to be everything you want to be, which I believe, but I think it takes hard work.
Yeah.
And I think when you say it's a 30-second tip on TikTok, it discounts all the hours and hours of work, the 24/7 work that it takes to actually have that.
To change your life. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
off my soapbox. Yeah.
I think a lot of people have good intentions and there is good content out there, but it's hard to come by. And I also think when it's not coming from like a professional, I'm hesitant. I would think twice. Like you said, it's hard to fit these really complex, nuanced topics into a 30-second video. And also like, the way it applies to everyone's life is going to look different.
Absolutely.
So I think the intentions for the most part are good in like normalizing mental health problems and stuff like that. But it gets to a point where I'm like, we are teetering on a fine line here.
Yeah.
So
we can hold two conflicting ideas together.
Right.
Having social media and really mental health topics be readily accessible and in the mainstream conversation is so good. Oh my gosh, so good. And really can shortcut things for people, can help them find their community. I mean, I have a friend who found out that they were autistic just by watching YouTube videos and watching content online and going, I connect with this, and then went to a doctor and got a diagnosis. And wow, that is life-changing. That idea, along with this can be so destructive. Listening to non-professionals talk about mental health topics, who are giving advice, who have large platforms, it's hard to watch.
Yeah. And if you're going to a doctor and getting a diagnosis, you're doing the right things, right? But it's more so, I think it's more destructive when people are like, oh, I check all 5 of these boxes, I'm diagnosed. Or they take an online quiz or something along those lines. It's like, pay attention to the things that you identify with, obviously, but also you need to see a professional and get an actual diagnosis, not just to assume that you qualify for a diagnosis, because it's a lot more complicated than I check 5 boxes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it just depends.
Yeah. It is really difficult. And so I think one thing I would just say is if you're seeing something that is coming up on social media, bring it to your counselor. I mean, that kind of sounds silly, but I get TikToks from my clients all the time.
Yeah.
Bring it to your counselor to discuss or bring it to your doctor. And I think it can really shortcut the conversation. And then we can talk about the DSM, right? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that we use to diagnose mental health disorders. Yeah. What do you think about diagnosis as a whole?
Ooh, loaded question.
I know. We're taking a little rabbit trail here.
That's okay. So I always have diagnosis in the back of my mind just because it can help lead you in the right direction in terms of treatment. But I don't really give formal diagnoses unless my client asks for them. Just because some people aren't looking for that. And in some ways they may not benefit from it. And there's other people who are like, I need to know what's wrong with me. I need a word to put to it. Like, I need to understand. So I think it's this, like, funny little dance we do sometimes. Like, I might have in the back of my mind, oh, they qualify for this diagnosis. And so this is the direction I'm going to go in. And I might ask them, like, is that something you're interested in? Or, like, what is best for you in this situation? And I think it also depends on the diagnosis, right? Like,
Absolutely.
if we're talking about something like adjustment disorder, unless they want that, like, I don't know that it's...
For our listeners, what is adjustment disorder?
Let me pull out my DSM real quick. Basically just like when you have a change in your life, an adjustment, and it takes longer than it does the average person to adjust back to like your baseline. That is a very vague definition, and don't quote me on it. But, and you know, that's very subjective in a lot of ways. But when we're talking about something more serious, that's like, you know, detrimental to your life in some way, shape, or form, it might be a bigger conversation about, I think this is necessary. And we can involve your psychiatrist and your doctor and your family.
Your school.
Yeah. So like thinking about autism spectrum disorder, your school, it's important that they're involved if that is something you do qualify for.
Absolutely.
A diagnosis.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very situational. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it is very difficult, and there is a lot of self-diagnosis that sometimes happens with our clients.
Yep.
Or misusing diagnoses.
Yeah.
OCD is a very popular one. And
And
bipolar.
yeah.
I'm bipolar. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you have no idea what you're saying. That's okay. But we can use this as an opportunity to talk about what is bipolar disorder.
Let's do some psychoeducation. And yeah, another one I've seen as of late that is like kind of trending is borderline personality disorder. Like I literally see like there's a meme page on Instagram that's like
Really?
something BPD. And don't get me wrong, the memes are funny, but I'm like, that is just a wild thing to throw around.
Right. It's a very serious personality disorder.
Yeah. And, you know, you have a client walk in your room and be like, I think I'm borderline. Well, let's unpack that. Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. I can empathize that. I mean, I remember feeling a certain way and not feeling normal. And I was really sad. Well, turns out I had depression, right? But I was like, it's fine. I'm just really sad and whatever. And to have a professional say, you meet the criteria for depression, I think took a weight off of me. I'm not crazy.
Right.
I'm not crazy. There is something happening to me. And it allowed it to separate myself from that episode and say, this is something that's happening to me. This is not me. Because I was like, am I messed up forever? You know, is this my brain now? And no.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is the important part of diagnosis. It can
Absolutely
help someone better understand what's happening and like identify what it is. And also like in a sense of like, I want to use the word community, but like there are other people out there that are dealing with the same thing you are. And like gosh, we talked about procrastination last episode. I didn't get an ADHD diagnosis until last year.
Yeah.
And I literally thought that there was always just, I didn't understand that ADHD in women presents very differently than men, because I've never been the hyperactive type. Like, I'm not really impulsive, but man, am I the stuck type. I get stuck. And so I think when I figured that out, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense. Like, it's not like I'm just flawed and I don't know how to do work. Like,
right. All these people that called me lazy and even labeled procrastination. Yeah. When you really put it in terms of an ADHD diagnosis, it can reframe all the ways that you struggled. Yep. And actually as we unpacked last time, it's not something to just say, well, I'm now excused. I have ADHD, so now I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to be stuck all the time. I think there is power in a diagnosis. Say, I have ADHD, and so that informs how I'm going to support myself.
Right. And informs people around you, people in your life, that this
Absolutely.
is what you're struggling with. You need to be held accountable. That's something I've always told you. I have to be held accountable. Because if I'm not, I'll get away with it. Or I'll try to. So I think diagnosis is important in a lot of ways. But when we have clients coming in that are like, well, I saw this TikTok and I think I'm bipolar. I'm like, let's talk about that. Like I said, let's unpack that. And like, you might be, and that's fine. And, we'll take the next steps that are necessary. Yeah. But what do you mean by that?
What do you mean?
Especially when they're like my teens. I'm like, let's take a step back, because you're not even old enough to technically qualify for that.
Yeah,
diagnosis.
I don't have a doctor or psychiatrist who will even diagnose bipolar in teenagers.
Even though you might have symptoms, but it's just too soon.
Yep. I had to advocate for one of my clients. I'm like, no, they're bipolar. They're bipolar.
I'm sure
There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way. Yeah. Please, get them help that they need.
Yeah, and like with those, with like a bipolar diagnosis, getting medicated is really important.
It is a game changer.
And that's another piece of diagnosis that we get into. I'm like, it could be necessary in terms of like the direction your psychiatrist is going to go in here.
Yeah.
And what medication they're going to put you on. So, yeah, it's again, like I said, very nuanced, very situational.
So then when we really put it on social media, we can really get lost in that.
It gets very sticky.
It does get very sticky. Can I give you my spiel on the DSM?
I'd love to hear your spiel on the DSM.
Oh, I love giving this spiel in sessions. So when people are really seeking a diagnosis, obviously I'm validating. Like, it's important. It can be important to have a diagnosis. This book was made up.
Yes.
This book, we just made it up.
Somebody just wrote these things.
Somebody just wrote it down. Now,
a lot of people.
I know. They came together, but initially it was old white men who wrote this down, what was normal and abnormal. And actually it changes every few years what is diagnosable and what the diagnosis actually looks like. So diagnosis changes, the criteria changes. This means that what we determine as normal and abnormal changes.
Right.
Being gay was in the last DSM.
Yep.
And so
there's a lot to unpack there, but we won't get into it.
Well, and so it is, on one hand, so helpful to have diagnosis, and on the other hand, what if you meet 4 out of the 5 criteria? Does that discount your struggle?
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And so even if you don't check all the boxes for a diagnosis, we want to recognize that everything that you're presenting with is real and true.
Right.
Even if it doesn't have a name.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get way into the weeds here, but like abnormal and normal.
This is what it's for. I mean, this is what I love is getting into bigger conversations and following the rabbit trail. So give it to me.
Yeah, it's who is really to say what is abnormal and normal? Like thinking about adjustment disorder, let's say your partner passes away. Who is to say how long it should take you to get back to your normal life? Like,
yeah, that would be like prolonged grief disorder.
Yes.
I think that's what that is.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it is like, well, how long
is normal to
is
grieve?
normal? Guess what? We just decided.
What?
We just decided that this is how long, that
you
it takes
should
to
have
grieve.
moved on by X, Y, and Z.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think that's where we really get into the weeds of what is normal and abnormal and who is determining that. Yeah. Diagnosis serves its purpose.
Yeah. And it is based in research and it's based in testing. Like, I do understand there is a part that's like, it's not random people deciding this. It is well-informed people that are deciding what is normal and abnormal. But our definitions are ever changing. So I see. You're leaning in.
I'm leaning in.
You're in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you, I guess, see in terms of, like, when I say pop psychology, Like, tell me about that.
Pop psychology. There is a lot of generalizing and a lot of labeling. And like those are two things that in actual therapy we try not to do too much. And the word narcissist.
Ooh, yeah, that's a
gets thrown around like nobody's business. And don't get me wrong, there are narcissists. They exist. You know, might be your partner, might be your mom, definitely possible, but like, let's use this word properly. Let's define it. Not everybody you dislike is a narcissist. And that's also a big label to give someone. Oh, yeah. And like big T, little t.
Tell me more about big T, little t. Explain to our listeners.
Big T is like a major trauma that happens in your life that is life-altering. Little t is something that, a smaller trauma, obviously, but it's easier to move on from. The impacts aren't as long-lasting, although they might be there. And it's different for everyone. Like, bullying to some people might be
big T.
Big T.
Yep.
It can change your life forever, change who you are.
Yep.
But like, and then like something like a bad car accident might be a little T for some people, but it's a big T for others. So anyways, there are benefits to normalizing things. I just think we have to be cautious.
Yeah.
And I think because teens especially so badly want to understand what's wrong, why they feel different, they try and stick a label to it. And I think that can be dangerous, to over-identify with something that's not actually you. And that's a lot of the identity work, right, that we do with our teens and our young adults, trying to figure out who they are and what it is that's going on.
So we can understand why we're reaching for labels, even things like personality tests. It's like, I'm an ENFP, and so this means this and this and this about me. And maybe maybe you're that and maybe you're not.
And we don't want to confine ourselves to a box. That is not how life works.
I mean, what we're aiming for is actually freedom.
Right.
That in spite of whatever label or box that you might put yourself in, or doctors might put you in, or school might put you in, or partners might put you in, that you can be free to be you.
Right.
And make good choices for yourself.
Yeah. And also that you don't have to have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's funny. My personality, my Myers-Briggs, like you were just talking about the ENFP, mine has changed a couple times. So like, and I think that as teenagers and young adults, we are so desperate to have it figured out. And like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And you might be 40 and still figuring it out. And that's fine. Yeah. Like, and
there's beauty even in like a diagnosis that doesn't quite fit. And then plenty of people that we see have one diagnosis and then end up with a different one.
Yeah. Or they come to us with a diagnosis and you're like, huh?
Hey. Yeah.
Yeah. So all that being said, it's complicated.
This is very complicated. And I really appreciate you being willing to get into the weeds with me today when we are talking about something that can be very sensitive to people. We understand that people are searching for answers, and I can totally like feel that. Oh, so if our listeners have kind of zoned out for our entire podcast episode, can you give us like a takeaway that they can apply to their lives?
Don't believe everything you see on the internet. And if it feels generalized and what was the word I used earlier? Generalized. I'm forgetting.
I don't know.
Oversimplified.
Oh.
Generalized and oversimplified, it probably is. And, you know, if you feel like you qualify for a diagnosis or you have a mental health question, consult a mental health professional or your doctor. Yeah.
Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Send me your DMs. Send me your TikToks.
What do you think about this? And maybe we can unpack it on the podcast.
We can unpack it on the podcast.
Exactly.
Guys, I mean, I knew that this is a whole different topic, that when you show up and you find things there, right? Like
Right.
you're going to find things here. And when I started a podcast, I was like, I have to plan every single bit out. I have to plan every single thing. And really just showing up and being present with you has brought plenty of conversation.
Yeah.
So I think that is something I'm consistently taking away from these podcast episodes.
Is that you don't have to have it figured out.
I don't have it figured out.
Look at that.
I can let go of control.
Oh, gosh.
And when I'm present with people that I really trust and respect, that we have plenty to talk about. Yeah. This is a complicated topic. So please let us know if you have any questions. We would love to unpack this even more. I could talk for like 8 more hours just on this topic.
Maybe I'll find some TikToks that I have questions about.
Yes.
And we'll unpack that.
Let's unpack that. One of my favorite.
I've said that like 37 times in this podcast, but like I say that a lot in real life. So
tell me what you mean by that.
Oh, my go-to in session, if any of my clients are listening, you know, I say, can you elaborate on that for me? Well, like, what do you mean by that? And I like make a face. There's a face that comes with it. But anyway.
Emily was on the podcast. It was our first guest on the podcast. Thank you very much. She says all the time, tell me more.
Oh, God.
Tell me more about that.
We are the stereotype
I'm like,
of therapists.
You know, as much as I think that I break the box of what therapist means, I do find myself saying things like, tell me more about that. What do you mean by that?
Yep.
Can you tell me what that means to you? I just roll my eyes at myself. It's okay.
Yeah. Like I end every session. Comments, questions, concerns. Send them our way.
Yeah. Well, this is another episode of Counselor on the Clock. Thanks for joining us. I always hope that the listeners can feel less alone when they're listening.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They can sit like they're sitting with friends and talking about mental health topics. We love it. Do we have a tagline yet?
I don't know if we do.
We don't.
That
is my tagline.
I can't think of anything.
Give me a tagline.
Let me think. We hope you enjoyed your time off the clock with us. Have a great day.
That's just it.
That's it.
Have a day. I actually don't even have a great day.
Have a day. Survive today.
Have a day. Be present. See, it's like then I just fall into like all the platitudes. I'm just annoying myself.